Welcome to Security Buyer Live. I'm Sal D'Agostino, and I'm here today to go along with Pete Jones to cover the advantages of OSDP, an industry-developed international access control standard. Pete, would you like to say hello?
Hi, I'm Pete Jones. I'm the managing director of a company called Third Millennium. We make OSDP readers, and I've got a lot of experience in implementing this stuff. But I'll let Sal start by talking about the standard.
Well, thanks, Pete. Yeah, it's great to have someone who actually makes this stuff and has been involved with the standard as long as you have. So moving on. So I'd like to thank you for coming today and to hear more about the Open Supervised Device Protocol, which is OSDP, and the advantages and benefits it brings to physical security and access control. I'd like to start with some background on what is OSDP. So OSDP is a standard for controllers and peripheral devices to communicate with each other. In most cases, these are entrance controllers and credential readers that provide supervised access to all kinds of spaces and locations. And OSDP, by doing this in a secure, standard, and interoperable way, addresses some critical security gaps that exist really in almost all legacy physical access control systems. A surprising thing and something that's really important for us as an industry and all its stakeholders to address. The Security Industry Association, which is an American National Standards Institute Standards Development Organization, or SDO, and those won't be the last acronyms we throw at you here, but we'll try to keep it to a few, actually maintains the standard in a process that is open and active and under continuous improvements with stakeholders around the world. The OSDP standards itself actually evolved from what at the time was Mercury, Linnell, and HID in 2008, when literally 14 years ago, it was recognized there existed the need to replace the Wiegand wiring standard, which itself was over 20 years old at the time. The actual standard was published by SIA as AC-01 to give you some idea of how old the Wiegand standard is, and was published as a standard in 1996 and was in use before that. And in too many cases, this insecure and inefficient wiring and the devices that use it are still being specified and purchased today, which is a big part of why we're very happy to present and show people that there's a better way forward. Since 2012, SIA and stakeholders, including device and software providers, access and security system operators, system integrators, consultants, and developers have worked together to getting OSDP accepted as an international standard by the International Electrotechnical Commission. And that was actually officially published on July 8th of 2020. And get ready, because this is really what you'd like to be specifying is IEC 6083911-5:2020. But so that was a huge accomplishment for all of us that have been involved with this for a long time. But just getting a standard published is not a guarantee of its adoption. Unfortunately, the OSDP effort brought together industry over time to build consensus represented in the standard. And in the support of this process, SIA has taken a number of steps to continue to maintain the health and future benefits that the standard can bring. These include open source code and conformance requirements in a GitHub repository. SIA provides administrative support of the standard and its committee, as well as other programs. And so I'd like to move on to some of these other programs. So that covers the background. So as I said, it isn't enough simply to publish a standard. It's certainly great to have it adopted, but in terms of interoperability, it's critical that other things be in place, namely conformance to the standard and education around it. And SIA has put in place 2 programs to address these goals. Within the OSDP Verified program, which is a certification program, and the OSDP boot camps, which are an education program. We need the Verified program looks to make sure that the technical implementations of the standard are consistent across the different devices that can claim to adopt the standard. There have been a number of versions of OSDP out there in the past, and it's important today that, and where we're at with this work, that everybody get to the latest version of things. There are two device categories in the standard: access control units, or ACUs, and peripheral devices, or PDs. And the OSDP verified program, operated by ID Machines on behalf of SIA, tests ACUs and PDs according to the different profiles. And for both the ACUs and the PDs, or what we often refer to as door controllers and card readers, there are basic, secure, biometric, and smart card profiles. And the OSDP verified program provides device manufacturers a consultative certification and listing for the devices by firmware, which is then kept up to date with the standard. The OSDP verified laboratory, which I'm very proud to be associated with, is a collaborative of subject matter experts on the protocol, working together with industry to help meet the goals of security and interoperability. In many cases, we've helped companies to come into alignment with the standard. And after submission, we provide oversight and support on the maintenance of the firmware and the functionality of devices. The verified program was actually started in parallel with the publication of the standard in 2020, and has continued to grow to meet certification. More than a dozen companies have their OSDP families of products listed, and as a result, in many cases, of customer demands for the benefits of OSDP. The program has expanded its laboratory to meet increasing demands, and this is coming in from all over the world, including the UK, France, Germany, South Korea, New Zealand, and other countries besides North America. The boot camps provide classroom training on the protocol and its business, technical, operational, and compliance benefits, as well as hands-on interaction and training with the devices that have gone through the OSDP verified program. So it's really, in order to make this successful, it has to be more than just a standard published. All of these components, which are now fully in place, I believe have a lot to do with why the standard is successful and being widely adopted. The boot camps are run at industry trade shows, regionally on sites. They can be done virtually via remote connections and training pods. And the classes go through what it takes to specify, procure, configure, integrate, operate, and maintain OSDP systems. And it's really, and by providing that kind of education over the life cycle and across the supply chain, I think that's had a lot to do with why we're where we are and successful. We also provide education credits by as-is and looking to get the like from other organizations for those who attend the boot camps. So that's a little bit about the protocol itself. Thanks, Pete, for listening to that. I know you know all that. I hope some of the people in the audience are familiar with this. And if not, obviously you can reach out to SIA and OSDP verified program to find more details. But at this point, Pete, I'd like to turn it over to you so you can talk about what you really do with it and why you've been involved.
Thank you, Sal. That was fascinating. Yeah, before I start talking about the sort of value propositions of OSDP, I really want to talk about how it is different to what has gone before. Wiegand was a very simplistic one-way protocol, and a lot of people, that will be their experience of plugging an access control reader into a panel. OSDP is incredibly powerful compared to Wiegand, but as they like to say in the Spider-Man movies, with great power comes great responsibility, and that means that everybody in the value chain has to take responsibility for their piece of the puzzle. So I think maybe I'll start first by talking about what it means to the manufacturer and the design and development of these products. It starts, of course, with the specification, which is provided by SIA. This gives you a set of commands and responses that at first look are very obvious, but until you've actually tried to work with this stuff, you realize that people can interpret these things in different ways, and that's why you need the support of SIA and access to people who've done this to start guiding your process. So you can access people to talk to about what you're doing. You can also access the growing base of open source software, which will give you very real examples of how to implement OSDP in the real world. The next thing you probably need to do is go and acquire a variety of OSDP devices from other sources, preferably OSDP verified ones, because you'll have assurance of their compatibility with the standard. And then once you've actually developed your product and you're talking to all these other devices, you actually need to submit your product to the OSDP verified program. So if you're actually buying OSDP equipment, I think it's very important that you look for the OSDP verified logo. This will ultimately assure the interoperability of your readers, control panels, and other devices. And if you follow this path, you can actually design once and deploy your devices everywhere. So if you're an installer, commissioning a reader is very, very different. Once upon a time, you just bolt the reader to the wall, you plug it in, you turn it on, you present the card, and it goes beep. It's a bit different now. It's more like commissioning an IoT device, and installers need to understand that they need more of these, well, what I would call IT skills in terms of configuring devices and plugging them together in order to understand how OSDP devices should get deployed in the real world. You'll need to configure an address, you'll need to configure how fast it runs, and it runs on a 485 bus, which means you end up with a simplified cabling scheme. You only need 4 wires for power and communication. And also you can run more than one reader on the bus, which again saves you cost in terms of installing this equipment. But to fully understand OSDP from an installation perspective, I strongly recommend that installers sign up to an OSDP boot camp.
Yeah, you're too kind, Pete.
Yeah, well, we need to keep selling business. You know, I know how you like your wine. You know.
Yeah, no, I mean it's really true, right? I mean, there's an opportunity here for people to be doing something in a consistent manner, and consistency is something that helps everybody, right? So if your people are doing the same thing the same way, they can just get better at it, as opposed to constantly learning how to support, increasingly complex set of devices with increasing sets of capability, right? I mean, part of the reason why the protocol exists is because edge devices are much more intelligent, right? The thing that you were describing that just sat there and go beep was kind of dumb as a board, right? And insecure as well, right? So there's a real need for the protocol, and the value just comes in at every step in the process. So I mean, and so let me see if I can manage to get you to the next slide here, Pete. Thank you.
If you've been deploying IT equipment, there are a number of benefits that you already take for granted. And OSDP seeks to deliver these in what we call the OT environment, the operational technology environment, which is what is really beyond your IT network. So the most important one for me really is the cyber assurance you get through the OSDP secure channel, which provides an AES-128 encrypted communication method to transfer data between the reader and the panel and the reader.
Yeah, and the legacy protocol, Pete, sends all that information in the clear. Just it's understand. This is you'd think in 2022 having a secure communication link would be a given, but in fact, we're here saying you need to do this. And again, I don't think many people are fully aware that that's the case, either with the systems that they have, or even with the ones that they're looking to specify and acquire.
I mean, I come back to the responsibility point as well, because you can deploy OSDP without the encryption, which is not really a good idea. You're not really gaining much by doing that. So again, it's about installers skilling up and understanding what they're actually putting in.
Yeah,
and I think the biggest challenge is installation and configuration. The value speaks for itself once it's delivered properly.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, in the verified program, even though there is this basic profile, no one has come through and asked for it, right? So everybody understands that a big part of the value proposition is doing this secure profile and secure channel. So yeah, Pete, that's a great point.
So I guess my next point is that the file transfer is kind of my killer app for OSDP, because it's now about being able to push firmware to the readers, push configuration, push keys. You know, through the panel, you can find out what version of software is in your readers. So if something happens and a reader needs an update for either, you know, a bug or a cybersecurity vulnerability that's identified, or they want to use OSDP 3, which doesn't exist yet, but will do in the future, they have, you know, the ability to take advantage of this, you know, through communication from the panel to the reader. The S in OSDP stands for supervised. So if there's any kind of tamper or loss of communication between the reader and the panel, this is routed back to the head end, where it can be monitored on-site, off-site. Whoever needs to respond to these kind of events can be alerted to the fact that something's going wrong out on the edge.
Literally operational as opposed to not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And of course, all of this can be done remotely. The truck doesn't have to roll up to site. You know, we can look at these systems from afar. We can push firmware from afar. It can all be done remotely now. Whereas once upon a time, if you wanted to upgrade the firmware on a reader, you had to go to the reader and take it off the wall and plug it into a PC and reflash it. So that, I mean, that really covers the operation and maintenance aspect of OSDP and the value that you can derive from it. There are other features, of course, related to smart card, biometrics, and the user interface. Smart card is really about what we call the transparent mode, which allows a control panel to talk directly to a card, and which means you can keep all your cryptographic information in the control panel, which is a fascinating opportunity. The biometric commands allow you to match to biometric templates on a control panel. I mean, what's really interesting about these and the user interface commands is that they are very flexible and are open to innovation by people designing products using OSDP. So there are things that haven't been thought of yet, which can sit on the current protocol, which is what I think is really, really important.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Pete, even though we talk about smart cards here, it's supporting smart card communication between the card reader and the door controller. The OSDP is not about specifying. No. Just so that everybody knows what we mean when we say smart card support. So you actually have examples where you've used this, Pete, I understand.
Yeah, I got one case study I can leave you with. It's a major aircraft manufacturer. I'll leave you to work out which one. They had 3 requirements in upgrading. One was security, the second was compatibility, and the third was upgradability. Security was delivered through the OSDP secure channel. Compatibility was delivered through numerous vendors, all OSDP verified, providing compatible product. And then upgradability was really about the future proofing and the ability to push updates, access features we haven't even thought of yet through this mechanism with the hardware they've already got installed.
Well, thanks, Pete. And just curious, like today in the marketplace, I mean, are you increasingly seeing demand for OSDP? Do you help educate? You know, what's your sense out there where we're at with this?
Consultants are doing a far better job at speccing OSDP, but like we saw with things like DESFire, they need to be very specific about how they specify OSDP. It has to be secure channel. It probably needs to support file transfer out of the box, firmware updates. These the very things that I've put into that case study are the things that should be specified by the consultants.
Right. And those are the things that we measure and make sure meet the requirements of the standard in the program and teach people about in the boot camp and work on in the committees. So there's all kinds of ways that people can get involved, including putting OSDP on the wall of their, next time they need to do something with a reader. So I think that's it. That's it for today. Thanks very much, Pete. Thank you to Security Buyer Live, and thanks to everybody who joined us. Look forward to bumping into you virtually or in person, and hope everybody stays safe and as well. Thank you. And thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Sal. Take care.
Yep, bye now.